We humans have always gone to great lengths in the pursuit of happiness. Well, what if science could show you it's simpler and closer at hand than you might think? Dacher Keltner is a professor of psychology at the University of California, Berkeley, and faculty director of its Greater Good Science Center. His new book proposes just such a lab-backed recipe for the good life. It's called Awe, the new science of everyday wonder and how it can transform your life. And Dacher Keltner joins us now on the line from Berkeley, California. It's great to have you back. How are you doing?
It's good to be with you, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Let's do an excerpt and then we shall dive in, as we say. Sheldon, how'd you like to bring this graphic up? Nearly every day in classrooms of different kinds, from kindergarten circle rugs to lecture halls in Berkeley, from the apses of churches to inside prisons, from sterile conference rooms to gatherings in nature, I've taught people about finding the good life. What we are seeking in such inquiry is an answer to a perennial question, one we have been asking in different ways for tens of thousands of years. How can we live the good life? Now, 20 years into teaching happiness, I have an answer. Find awe. And for those listening on podcast, that's A-W-E, awe. And my first question to you, Dacher, is why awe?
Yeah, awe is the feeling we experience when we encounter vast mysteries in the world. For example, we see an extraordinary tree or people dancing in unison, or we hear a moving piece of music. And to answer your question, Steve, why awe? What this science of happiness has revealed just in the past 10 years that my book covers is awe is about as good for you as anything that you can do. It's good for your heart. It's good for your immune system. It helps you put your stresses in perspective. It helps elderly people feel less physical pain. It's good for your reasoning. So, as I thought about this emergent new science of awe, one of the reasons I wrote the book is to get this message out that this is really easy to find and it is very good for your mind and body.
Well, let me follow up on that. Do you need to be at the top of the Rocky Mountains or in the depths of the Grand Canyon in order to experience it?
Yeah, that was one of the most astonishing findings in this 10 years of research we've done, which is we call it everyday awe. We surveyed people every night for a couple of weeks in various countries like China and Japan and Spain and Canada and the United States. And what we found is people are feeling awe 2 to 3 times a week, and they're feeling awe about, as somebody told me recently in England, like catching the eyes of somebody on the tube and feeling a sense of common humanity, or listening to the laughter of children, or looking at the sky each day. So you don't need to travel much. You don't need to have a spiritual experience to find everyday awe. It's around us in very powerful ways.
I am curious as to your reaction when you saw William Shatner, Captain Kirk, land on the planet after having been in space, and clearly he was experiencing a kind of once-in-a-lifetime awe. What did you make of it?
Well, that's, there are these classic moments of what you might call big awe. Everyday awe is more of the small variety. It's all around you if you just pause for a moment and reflect on, what's mysterious about life. But, these big awe experiences that Shatner experienced, those are an important part of our lives. One of my favorite examples, Steve, and you might even think about it for yourself, is, we have those kind of experiences at music events, for example. Most of us are like, we tear up, we get the goosebumps, we have this transcendent experience like Shatner had coming to this planet. And it tells us something fundamental about why we're here. Have you had an experience like that of kind of profound awe at music?
As you described it, every single time I hear Beethoven's Ninth, particularly if it's by the Toronto Symphony Orchestra at Roy Thomson Hall, by the time they get to the last note, I am a puddle. It's just such an awe-inspiring thing. You could cry. I mean, that's it, right?
Yeah. And people do routinely at music, and those tears are really released by part of our nervous system that helps us be open to the world and engage with others. And part of the message of the book is not only to think about everyday awe, but to return to the sources of big awe, like music, like big discoveries in Shatner's example that really tell us what our purpose or our meaning in life is.
Well, let me get you to share an experience that is kind of off the path of what you just described. It was huge, obviously, but it was also tragic, and it's not what we traditionally think of as an awe-inspiring moment. But perhaps you could go into that, and I refer, of course, to the death of your brother.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I had an extraordinary childhood with my younger brother Rolf, who was 1 year younger than me, and we grew up in the late '60s in Laurel Canyon, where there was a lot of music. Born in Mexico, then moved to the country, swam in rivers, climbed mountains. We had an awe-inspired brotherhood, and then he got colon cancer and passed away after 2 years, and it was brutal. Um, and that is a very hard cancer. And what struck me, Steve, and it actually led me to write this book, is I had been preparing for his passing. I knew he had a couple of months. I was reading up on how to sort of grieve when you lose somebody who is your brother, as close as he was. And that night, watching him leave this world, my family and I were around him. We were touching him. I looked at him and he seemed at peace with the world. He seemed to be moving into some other space that I couldn't understand. We all were in reverence of his being, if you will. And I'm a biological evolutionary scientist, and I had no way to make sense of the awe that I felt watching him pass. It is a huge mystery. What is life, and why do people we love go? And it really sent me on this mission, right? I lost my sense of awe during grief. I was really struggling. I returned to the things that bring me awe, like mountains and music, and people who inspire me, even in prisons, and to really recapture what my brother had meant to me in my life. And I learned a lot along the way about how awe helps us even in the hardest of times.
Thank you for sharing that. I know, for example, fear, anger,
Yeah.
disgust, surprise. These things have all been studied at great length by numerous academics and scientists and so on. Awe has not. Why do you suppose?
Yeah, it's so extraordinary because people like Descartes and Darwin and Aristotle really felt that awe, or our capacity for wonder, like Jane Goodall, the great primatologist, was just our most human emotion. And yet science really hadn't studied it. And I think that, part of it is it sounds more serious to be studying fear than awe. And scientists are a little bit defensive, right? And then part of it is that awe touches upon things that are really hard to define and even measure scientifically, like the sublime or the sacred or spirit, right? People often talk about spirituality with awe, but we've made a lot of progress in figuring out how to study this miraculous emotion, to find what its benefits are, and it's now a very fruitful area of inquiry in our field.
Awe is a feeling, as you define it, quote, that transcends your current understanding of the world. And I wonder if, in some strange way, that's a bit problematic because, of course, we very much want to understand our world. It makes us feel safer if we understand our world. So why do we need awe?
Yeah, well, and what an astute comment, because it is this paradox of awe, that awe happens when we see things we can't make sense of, or hear things we can't make sense of. And we cry and we get goosebumps and we feel small and feel like we're disappearing, and feel connected to things that are vast. So why would we have an emotion that really is really at the heart about uncertainty and the fallibility or limits of our knowledge? And I think for two reasons we have awe, Steve, and they're really important today. The first is it'll sound a little arcane or academic, but it's to help us understand that we're connected to large systems in the world, that we are part of cultures and families and musical groups and traditions and ecosystems and big ideas. We care about big ideas. Awe relates us to all these big things in the world. When people feel awe, they will say things like, oh, now I understand who are my people, or what is my home, or how I'm really part of the ecosystem and not an owner of the ecosystem. Awe opens our minds up out of this narrow focus we're so often lost in, to broader patterns in the world that we're part of. And then the second one is really simple, which is that in the course of our evolution, we became a very social species, a very collective species. And awe, more than any experience, makes us realize that we are part of community, that we're part of collective. Even when you go out in the beauties of Canada, right? the Rockies or the forests or the oceans, and you have an experience of awe, you will walk out of that experience in nature feeling like, I actually have a lot of good community around me. And when we think about the epidemic of loneliness right now, 40% of Americans feel too lonely. Awe is an antidote through that sense of community.
It is an antidote, but since you're on the issue of sort of how we think evolutionarily speaking,
Right.
we certainly understand why we, evolutionarily speaking, have anger or fear,
Right.
or, I mean, all of
Right.
that makes sense. Where does awe fit into that puzzle?
It's profoundly important, and it's pretty much a consensus now in the evolutionary world. E.O. Wilson, The Social Conquest of Earth from Humans. We do better in facing evolutionary threats to our survival collectively, right? Think about the climate crises and how we really need to bond together collectively. Awe makes us connected to others. We cooperate, we share, and the like. And then awe is an incredible engine of the development of knowledge. And I'm really worried that we're losing awe out of the schools, when in fact, and I write about this, a lot of the greatest discoveries in art and music and science and literature came out of experiences of awe. Rene Descartes and Isaac Newton were awestruck by rainbows.
Hmm.
They're like, how in the world do rainbows exist? How is it that light bends through water and then produces the color spectrum? And so they did some of their best math and physics to figure it out. And then time and time again, and in our own lives, awe helps us advance our understanding of the world, which is very good for our evolution.
Well, since you've raised culture, let's stay with that. And again, we'll pluck
Yeah.
a quote out of the book here. You write, awe animates the stories, ceremonies, rituals, and visual designs of indigenous people dating back tens of thousands of years. You might think of these as our first awe technologies. How so?
Yeah. Well, if awe has all these benefits, right? It makes me more modest, less egoistic, more calm, less stressed, stronger immune system, etc. You would imagine that cultures would create ways to evoke awe in us, much like, laughter is good for us, and we have comedies throughout the cultural traditions, and jesters and fools and so forth. And once you have that thesis and you start looking at culture, as I write about, like you said, Steve, the Beethoven was a lot about awe, to bring people together in the experience of awe. Many of the visual patterns of the indigenous societies of Mesoamerica have a lot of sort of activation of awe in them for the benefits of awe, right? I was raised, my dad, by a painter, and my mom taught literature, ironically enough, poetry from Romanticism, which is about awe. And those cultural forms bring us awe, as does religion. So you can think about us creating culture to just activate this emotion that makes us better members of our community.
If you're going to bring us back to Beethoven, I'm going to ask another question about Beethoven, and that is this. I get, when somebody's standing on the top of the Rocky Mountains and they see that vista for the first and maybe only time in their lives, it can have an awe-inspiring impact. I've heard Beethoven's Ninth probably 50 to 100 times, and yet it has the same impact every time. How come?
Yeah. You've just put your finger on one of the mysterious and magical properties of awe. Pleasures, the more we experience many realms of pleasure, the less pleasurable it becomes, right? You buy some new shoes, they're pleasurable, you enjoy their sensory experience, their sensory appearance, and then they diminish in their pleasure. And that's called the law of hedonic adaptation. But awe doesn't operate that way. And in fact, our research suggests that the more, like you, Steve, the more that you go after what you really will find awe in, the richer it gets, the more powerful it gets. In California, we have a lot of fungi and tree enthusiasts who just love the science of fungi and trees. And the more they dive into it, the richer and more powerful and awe-eliciting it becomes. So what a great property of this wonderful human emotion, awe, is that the more we learn about it, the more we pursue it, the more it gives to us.
Amen, brother. Okay, well, speaking of amen, brother, how about religion? Could we have religion today without awe?
Yeah, I think we could, but I think, it was such an interesting thing. We've found in 26 countries that There are universals to the sources of awe, like nature and moral beauty and music, and also religion, very obviously. It's a human universal to believe in the divine. And there are certain theorists who really were animated by your question and made the case that awe is the core to religion. Emile Durkheim, the great French sociologist, felt it was about moving in unison when we're singing together, doing the rituals of religions, right? That brings us into a movement togetherness that just produces this ecstatic awe feeling. That's our sense of the divine. And then William James, the great American philosopher in the early 1900s, made the same case, following Ralph Waldo Emerson, that at its core, religion is about these self-transcendent emotions: bliss, awe, joy, love of humanity, where the self dissolves and you devote yourself to service and to other people and to the divine. And there are a lot of interesting new lines of thinking that awe is probably the central religious emotion, as you suggest.
Let me ask about impediments to awe. And to that
Yeah.
end, we'll look at ideology. Ideology,
Yeah.
people who are particularly ideological are very rigid in their views. They are not open
Yeah.
to, necessarily open to persuasion by others. Many of them believe they've got all the answers and so on. Everything is black and
Yeah.
white. So I guess the question is ideology an impediment to experiencing awe?
It is. I mean, and what a deep observation. I wish I'd written about that. You think about the polarization of our times, preventing, which is driven by ideology and misperception, being an impediment to the awe we might feel towards a fellow citizen of Canada or US who's really different from us, but there is a common humanity there. And ideology, and I would argue, Steve, and there are data on this more generally, more rigid patterns of thought where it's either or, yes or no, right, are impediments to awe. If you, for example, we've been talking about music, and if you really go into experiences in music and just say it's only Bach, he's the only one that matters, then and everybody else is secondary, you will miss out on the opportunities of awe in other musical composers, right? Same with films and moral forms of moral beauty. If you really think of it in very rigid ideological circumscribed terms, you will miss, as a general tendency, all the awe that's around us in things you ordinarily wouldn't perceive. So it's a real risk today.
You look far and wide to find some great stories about people who've
Yeah.
experienced awe, and I'm not surprised to see that Steve Kerr is in your book. Steve
Yeah.
Kerr, of course, having played with Michael Jordan for the Chicago Bulls and now having coached the Golden State Warriors to championships, multiple championships as well. He's had a few awe-inspiring moments in his life. But if someone wants to, okay, if we all can't be like Mike, where do we look for awe in the daily routine of life?
Yeah. And ultimately that's the question, in some sense and I'll remind our listeners and viewers and audience members, Einstein really felt that awe is really what brings life to being a human being. And I agree. And so that begs the question, how do I find it? And what I would say is the following, if you go outside today, there are simple practices you can do, like an awe walk that we've tested, where you walk more slowly and look for mystery, watch the clouds, stand near a tree and think about its age for a while, look to the sky. Nature is part of awe. Fellow human beings are remarkable sources of awe once you open your eyes. I loved the philosopher Soren Kierkegaard's quote that he loved to walk in public places like Toronto and just open yourself up to the humanity of others, right? How they're coordinating and laughing and engaged in social interactions, because it brought him into contact with what he called the significance of insignificant things. There's so much awe around us in our fellow human beings, their generosity, their courage, their humor, and the like. And then I really think that, I appreciate you bringing up culture and that quote of, rituals and poems and pieces of music. Listen more intentionally to music for awe. Consider, having a week of binging on awe-based movies or streamed episodes, right? And then if you're contemplatively or spiritually oriented, orient toward vastness and mystery in your contemplative practice. So in the book, you will get a sense of all these simple things to do right now that bring us awe.
Did you come to a conclusion as to whether we find awe more frequently or it finds us more frequently?
Well put. Yeah, I think it's the latter in general, that it catches us off guard, and suddenly we're, like the fellow in England who told me, literally tearing up. He's like, I was on the tube here and I made eye contact with this person who offered some money to another individual, and we just were in reverence for that moment, and it happened to him. And I think emotions often are involuntary and happen to us, but we're very good at cultivating awe. We're very good at putting a little awe into your daily practice or into your calendar. In fact, at the Greater Good Science Center, in December, we created an awe calendar where you can go find awe twice a week, just with simple practices, easy to get to, greatergood.berkeley.edu. And so I think it happens to us, but life is about being a little bit more intentional in finding awe.
Well, let's finish up on this. Can I assume that keeping your nose in one of these things 24/7 is not the path to finding awe?
No, and Steve, we surveyed and interviewed people in 26 countries, what brings them awe, from Canada to Mexico to India to Japan to Russia to the United States to Brazil. Not a single human being mentioned a smartphone. Not a single human being mentioned their laptop, nor a Google search, right? These are mediums to get to awe, and I think we've lost sight of that. And I think we need to remember, and we need to remind our people in the digital world to start designing for awe.
Bottom line, people, get your nose out of your phones and take a look around you.
Exactly.
Gotcha. I can't thank you enough for this awesome interview, if I can steal a word there. Dacher Keltner is the professor of psychology at the University of California, Berkeley. He is the author most recently of Awe, the new science of everyday wonder and how it can transform your life. And we're always delighted to welcome him back to TVO. Thanks so much, Dacher.
Steve, it's always great to be in conversation with you. Hope for the next time.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is made possible through generous philanthropic contributions from viewers like you. Thank you for supporting TVO's journalism.